and welcome to this video. This is going to be a 101 kind of prerequisite video to the new series that I'm putting out on energy systems. I am trying to really bring it back to the basics and start at the foundation and offer some general understandings about systems and how they work, so that hopefully in our own lives we can become more conscious about the systems and interactions that we're involved in, and to create more harmonious solutions for ourselves. I guess. The infographics that I'm going to share are sort of my beginner's attempt at showing visually what I'm talking about, because I do understand these topics are deep and the vocabulary is thick, and a lot of times it can almost seem really superficial and confusing, depending on where you're at intellectually and also spiritually, and where in your evolution of learning you're at. So this 101 video here is my hope of being or creating really this sort of common starting ground for all of us. So if you are brand new to my channel and you are just coming here for the first time, I'll have a lot of references and links down in the descriptions and in the comments, so that you could do some backtracking if it interests you, or if you find that you're really confused but intrigued about what I'm talking about and you want to hear more, or you need more in-depth kind of explanations. I have a lot of videos where I've talked about really a lot. This is my hopes again for these videos in this series, is to keep things short and to the point, because if you aren't new here, then maybe you enjoy it, but I can be really long-winded and I can talk around a subject a bit too much sometimes. And so with these videos here with the systems, I really want to keep it structured and informational and to the point. But if you're looking for more, if you'd like some, hear more metaphors and things that I'm talking about, you can find definitely more references in the comments. So with that little preamble here, I am going to pull out my first infographic that I'd like to share. Bear with me. Sorry, I'm learning Zoom. So this is kind of the meeting ground. First and foremost, I do want to just give a quick couple of vocabulary words so that people can get those right out of the way in case you're new. First and foremost, sovereignty. If you are new to the topic or you don't understand the word completely, definitely take some time to ruminate on it and to do some research around it, because sovereignty, knowing that you are an individual, beautiful, eternal soul and bestowed with worth by being alive, and bestowed with rights to the pursuit of happiness and to living your journey. Those are the kind of things that get wrapped up with sovereignty, that sovereignty is all about, a common respect for yourself as well as others. So that's a word and a term that's I'm going to talk a lot about, and if it's new to you, I highly suggest checking it out. Another term is infinite intelligence. I will talk about that a lot, and that in itself is kind of self-explanatory. For my own personal definition, I do think that infinite intelligence is a multifaceted, multidimensional layering of understandings that is coursing through the etheric soup of our existence continuously from everything, in all kinds of different ways, with a higher purpose and design, to seek to know itself more further and discover what it might. The infinite intelligence in itself is an extension or an understanding that there is a great observer, God or source, which is that infinite intelligence. Energy exchanges is another term or phrase that I'm going to use a lot and that this whole thing is about. And basically, energy exchanges are systems, and in themselves, they're transactions, whether it's information, emotions, frequency, um, actual service, a physical exchange. Um, Whether it involves other people, as in, system out there that's manifested and built up and people go and interact within it, or whether it's systems within yourself, um, you know, that can take on a physical thing like your um, anatomy and physiology type of systems. It can be emotional systems, it can be thought systems. Um, those are all energy exchanges that you're involved in different ways. Um, yeah, so that I guess would be it for kind of terms. Oh, actually, sorry. Polarity and service, orientation and alignment. All those things I use kind of interchangeably, although there are nuances between them. But polarity or service alignment basically has to do with negative or positive energetics and frequencies. Um, and yeah, so I'll be using those terms a lot. And it's important to understand that systems in themselves collect and carry a momentum, sort of this energetic charge of polarity, depending on what kind of service it's doing, and based on what kind of service is input into it. So these are all, this is just base level knowledge here, just the beginning. Don't worry about it, because we will dive into all of it in intricate detail later, and all the episodes to come. This is just sort of our 101, let's all get on the same page thing. So I put up here to share on the screen basic given truths. Sometimes in other videos or at other times I'll call them undeniable truths. To me, it's things that bubble up that you cannot deny them. Maybe we have different explanations of them, or purposing behind them, or how we got to them, or the orchestration behind it, but we have to agree upon certain things because they're self-evident. So these basic given truths for this, in my angle of talking about energetic systems and what we're getting on the page of today and in the series, I really feel that it's important we all get on the same foundation of these basic given truths. And as you can see there, we are energetic beings living in an energetic universe. And within that, I also mean and hope that we understand that we are beings, multifaceted, multi-layered happenings going on, and same thing with the universe. And the second is there is some form of intelligent design responsible. And again, we could argue about what that intelligent design is, who it is, the functions of it, its desires and wants and all of that, but that's really not what we're going to get into. It's meeting on the common ground that we witness intelligent design happening. I mean, you can't deny that things are orchestrated in certain ways. Intelligent design presents itself here in this world. And finally, we can all agree that this layer or dimension of reality that we're embodying here on Earth is set within a spectrum or on a spectrum of duality and of polarity, right? Of this or that, of dark or light, of day or night, good, bad, we witness it, we see it. And whether we think that this is a functionality of the human setup, or whether we think this is something of the greater scope to do with infinite intelligence, whether, none of these things matter really. I mean, they do, and we can talk about them later, but to get on the same common ground of that, yes, we do see opposition happening. We do compare and contrast. We do learn through and with this spectrum in mind. And all things that present themselves in our world come through this kind of working. And because of that truth and knowledge, we should accept that the ultimate purpose clearly is to seek definition within the gradient, to have a clear picture of the whole at the end, right? What is the purpose of having a clear definition television if you're standing straight at the screen, like super close? It doesn't matter how good your definition is, right? It's when you back up across the room or whatever that you see the better picture. And that's the present. That's the gift that we're given through this scope of duality here. And it's important that we get on the same page in understanding this, because all systems operate within that setting. And when we can understand and see them for what they are, then we can know where we want to put our service at, where we want to expend our energy at, we want to use our currency within which systems, what do we want to be a part of and consenting to, what aligns with our own greater good, our highest path to our highest purpose, what do we want to be involved in, and then go be a part of it. And again, or actually continuing, we'll go on and just talk about, once we accept these truths and get onto that same page, that's where my series sort of starts, right? And we can talk about the basic model of creation. I talk about that a lot with the creator's mindset. I'll put some links to that if this kind of thing interests you. I have some other infographics I've shared before with this kind of mathematical concept, 1 + 1 = 3. So I'll share, I think I wrote a blog and some other things on it, so I'll find the links and put those in the comments after I air this as well, in case this kind of thing intrigues you. But like I said, in the episodes to come, we're going to dive into it anyways. But in the meantime, if you'd like more, I do have this more. If you can notice down below that Venn diagram there, this is such a beautiful model, and I'm sure if you know or have been looking into anything kind of metaphysical or esoteric, if you have a spiritual calling, then you have seen this great metaphor and the great learnings that come with the conception of creation and the division of circles, the seed of life, the flower of life, sacred geometries. If you know about the platonic solids and things like that, you'll be very familiar with this and the importance and the beauty, of creation here, with these simple circles intersecting. This is obviously the basic model of conception, and you can even see the cell ourselves as human beings. We have this initial growth, right? The division of cells that starts with the spark of life. Creation of any sort of idea even goes through the same template. And it's my hope to use this model as a template, and we can talk about all types of creations, not just conception of a human being, not just conception of an idea, but even just going into a conversation, going into the next moment, going into internal conversations and workings with yourself even. All these things can be represented and seen in this way. And we're going to get into that a lot more, obviously. But here's the basic model, which says intention plus attention equals a creation of some sort. And the thing is that, and I've noted here with the arrow and shown the sacred reflective boundaries, and this is something that is set by infinite intelligence. A creator consciousness determines with its intention and intention, its love and light, and that this is something outside itself to be looked at, to be categorized, classified, labeled, orchestrated, organized, and at that moment of creation, the moment of conception, of the creation, that new creation becomes charged with the polarity of the creator's intention at that time. And it's imprinted and it becomes what it is. And then it's off to be in the universe, in life, on its own life. And it has its own purpose and a function. And it's so important that we understand that we are, right, creator consciousness, right? And that this is our great job. This is our task to learn and practice, and we are alchemists in this way. We are creators. The consciousness has the free will to choose the polarity, to make that imprintation. Whatever. It sets the tone, the atmosphere of the creation, right? And if we understand this and we're more conscious about what we're doing, and I've talked about this so many times about creating freedom, not slavery, right? Because as we are creating things, we are the creator, We are either really entangling ourselves in our creations and forcing them to be a certain way and act a certain way. Therefore, we are, making ourselves the managers of them in a really restrictive, micromanager-esque kind of way. And then we have to be responsible for it. We have to watch how it interacts, and we have to, be on the books, like tally marking how it's doing and its energy services and all of that. That's, takes up a lot of energy, and it's a very negative system. Conversely, if we're birthing something that's free flowing and free to be as it is, and to change and to alter and to go out and live its life as is, and then we're free to go and interact with it and see how it responds, but we're not tied to it, we're not entangled to it, it's not a representation of us. We lose that negative overall seeking of managing restriction and control, and we allow and accept, and we bring in more positivity, and hence we have a more positive experience when we're part of that system, and we've created a more positively aligned creation. And hopefully that's like the goal. I mean, I am biased, and I am seeking service to others in a positive alignment. So I admit that, I see more benefits in the positive workings than I do in the negative. That's not to say that there isn't value in the negative and that I don't have negative aspects, of course. But anyways, I'm getting off point, and I really want to keep this direct. So that's the first infographic. That's our meeting ground. Like I said, we'll get deeper into these things later, but I want to go on to the next one so that I don't take up too much of our time here. So diving into that creation model, we have this other, more deeper view of it, which I'm calling here, for reference, the basic template of creation. And basically, this is exactly what I was kind of just talking about with the Venn diagram. When that sacred boundary is created, right? The creator consciousness, and sometimes I refer to it as the boss. I like that. I think it's quick and easy and very visual. The boss sets this sacred boundary, and they do so with intention. And using that intention, it defines the purpose and the function of whatever they have done with this boundary, right? Now, the boundary in itself, it's important to remember that this boundary is a container, and it sets a label or category that's relative to the creator only, pretty much, right? To the observer. You can't really get the full view and the full scope of the purpose of the creation unless you can actually see the boundaries and you see the outside and you understand why it's been coagulated in that way. If you don't have the reference points and the point of view or the scope, it might lack purpose or intent, is basically why I bring this up, because it's so important to remember creator consciousness, the bigger picture has and can have a whole other view. So we should leave room for it. We should leave potentiality and probability out to infinite manyness and possibilities that are outside of our reasoning or outside of our expectations or assumptions. Doing so leaves more of a porous boundary, more of exception. It's more of a expectation, of exchanges to happen versus setting of a firm boundary. But again, this is also delineating between positive and negative, and we'll get at that. But by setting this and defining this sacred boundary, it creates inner workings in there, right? It sets it apart for a reason. And so those inner workings in themselves become managers of something, processes of some sort. And again, I'm leaving this super, super generic, general, so that we can see the template at work. Now, the managers within their own boundaries and their own workings, right? Once they've been seen or put in place by the creator, they've been given their purpose, they in themselves now have their own layer of working. They have their own reality world that they function within, and that they are, and that they only, they are. And this becomes, in its own way, they become bosses now. creator consciousness. They become an extension of the original creator because they are seen as the boss of all of the functions that they are overseeing within their layer. And so they have processes and managers, quote unquote, underneath them. So now the managers are the bosses have the managers, and this layering, this splitting and dividing of work down into more intricate parts is systems, is the template. It is the organic way that intelligence spreads, that information spreads. And that is basically what I'm calling systems, that function of happening. Now, when we see that function of happening, and you can see down at the bottom of the screen the classic hierarchy I have with the figures and the little note beside it. And we'll get more deeper into this later, but the laws and truths for the interactions and communications set within the boundaries are determined at the time of conception by the creator's service alignment and its intention for this setting of the boundaries, for the function of whatever it is calling the whole at that point, right? However it's determined to be, what it is, what it's made to be and organized as, sets its flow in motion, sets its energy exchanges, it sets its alignment, whether it's positively or negatively aligned. And as creators, as the big boss, as infinite intelligence, we have the responsibility of conception, of the setting the tone for that whole being's existence. Do we enslave it or do we set it free? Do we offer options or do we confine? Right? Do we tell it it's stuck being as is and that's, you have this purpose, that's it? Or do we give it the same gift of free will that we have? Those are all the kinds of things that come up with setting up systems and setting up boundaries and stuff that we're going to get way more into. But just for the surface level understanding, it's important to understand that the depth available. So don't be confused and don't be caught up in the surface level appearance of things. Look at it, see that surface level, but never be afraid to, and always be reminded as well, and encourage yourself to see the other views. And I'll give you an example of what I mean quite obviously with the infographic here. So when you look immediately at the hierarchy down at the bottom with the figures, and I put a triangle behind it to sort of emphasize this way to look at things with perspective. Immediately we might look at that and see a top-down hierarchy, see it as this triangular shape, a vertical presentation of a standing triangle where the boss is at the top, and then we overlay importance to the highest piece. We give this great God consciousness importance, better than all, starter of all, up here. And then we have, the bosses that I've called, and then underneath the bosses we have the managers of the workers underneath there. And we see, or we impress the value of importance gets denounced as we go down, right? It's spread out more, there's more of them, so there's less importance kind of feeling to the hierarchy and the top-down reasoning, right? Many workers, fewer bosses, ultimate top. And also this comes with sort of a top-down understanding of how information flows and how it's allowed to flow. Both like communication information, resources, functions, responsibilities, tasks, all that kind of stuff gets really jammed in this vertical view of a standing upright triangle. And, that plays to the benefit of the negative alignment and to their inversion techniques and the way that they play off of presentation here in 3D. Because we're fed that this is the only way to look at it, and so we immediately see that as the only way or the best way or the top way or whatever. But if we stop and we pull our perspective a little differently, and instead of seeing the vertical triangle standing upright, if we see and draw a flat triangular space on the floor, so to speak, that each of these are all standing within on the same level horizontally, right? Then we start to understand a different perspective. Then we're seeing the working from positive angles, from a whole other viewpoint. Everybody's on the same sovereign level in that view. And it creates much different flow of information and allowance of communication and responsibility and importance, right? And um, that's really the, that's the main portion that I use, the main reason that I used that down at the bottom portion there, and want to talk about that in the forefront, because um, something as simple as shifting the way that you look at something or shifting your idea of how something is drawn, it makes a whole different vision. And it's important for us to remember, because we can get really, really wrapped up in presentation, and especially here, right, um, in the solid world. But there's whole other workings available. There's all other ways to look at things. So we'll get a little, like I said, we'll get a little bit more into that when we talk about them. But sometimes we go into these creations, we become creator consciousness in the matrix, and we're fed this vertical version, and we think it's the only way to work. We think we have to climb a ladder to get upwards, and that's the only way it works. But it's definitely not. And we'll see that throughout the series. And bringing it back to the basics, really, like this, it helps us all. No matter whether you know this or not, you always find new lessons to be learned at your layer. So I'm going to go to the next infographic here and try to not be too long. So this now takes us into talking a bit about positive versus negative energy exchanges. So this is focused more at the individual level, but we'll get into what it looks like as it manifests in systems, and how we co-create with others and gain momentum in outside kind of reference points. But they all work the same, and so I just thought to just focus on the individual at the first to get the oomph of it. Energy exchanges basically have to do with your service alignment and what kind of truths that you tell yourself, or what kind of lies. And I talk a lot about this in like light versus dark and stuff. I'll put some links to that below in case you're interested in learning more about this sort of sovereign eternal flame concept. But basically, the importance to get from this is that we have two different views of how energy exchanges can be done. One of them is positive. It's self-sustaining, it's self-fulfilling, it operates in the black, quote unquote. The other is debt-based, it is reliant on input, and it is operating in the red, so to speak. Owing versus having a surplus. Now, the picture that I have under here is kind of self-explanatory, and if you've heard me talk about our eternal flame before, then you know the whole spiel. But all of this comes from the initial truth, whether we honor the truth or we reject the truth. And there is only one truth, and so it's very easy to understand. Yet every layer is new, and so you can hear this truth of the one truth. And every time you hear it, it's like coming to a newness, because you'll find a new intricate detail to it, new nuance for yourself, to create your own more intricate understandings of the one truth, which is that we are one. That there's one infinite creator, and that we are all of source. We are all interconnected in some kind of way. We are one. That is it. Now, that in itself comes with a great understanding and knowledge that we have this eternal soul, spirit, flame, spark, whatever electric kind of thing you want to call it or look at it as. We contain this, and when you live in your truth and you honor the one truth, you believe that energy is infinite, that you are eternal, that nothing can ever dull or steal your flame, because it's of the one, the before, God, the observer, whatever whatever you want to look at that as. It's unspeakable. It's, If you understand that, then you will be offering your service and offering your energy out freely. If you don't understand that, or you don't want to believe that, and you cage your own eternal worth and your own energy and your spirit, your soul, the part that makes you special and unique, if you lie about that and you reject that truth, what happens is that you will believe that energy is limited. And therefore, you will think that, well, I'm alive now, so I have to stay alive. And I have to get as much as I can in order to have this sort of resource to keep myself sustained. And so I must get from out there in order to fill this sort of cistern with energy or life or whatever you want to see it as, in order to keep me alive for as long as possible. And those two different ways of looking at things, they create whole different laws and truths that the systems will operate off of. And just for further clarity on here, I mean, you're free to read it as yourself, but I'll just go over these little defining points. Positive energy exchanges respect others' energies. Doesn't infringe on them, doesn't seek to force them. It seeks to assist them and to offer service, to see them how they are and to help them either heal or move forward or whatever it is that is the issue, the obstacle. The positive service seeks to help. Negative service would see that as an expenditure of energy resources that they can't, that are limited to them, and why would they expend them on another? Because it's at a cost to them. And so they don't seek to offer service freely. It always has a tie back to them. It always has an expectation for later, that's on the books and that they're waiting on, and they're infringing on others by doing that, right? Energy that is negative will abuse others. It will be infringing. It will be restricting and overpowering. It will be burdensome. And finally, down here at the bottom, I've kind of gone over this just a little bit already, but positive energy exchanges seek to share, to accept, to prosper, to move forward, a harmonious solution for all. And negative energy exchanges seek to hoard, to save, to stagnate, to keep themselves as is, safe for as long as possible. And most importantly, and what really makes this negative versus positive, good versus bad, is that hoarding, saving, stagnation, that border and everything is at the expenditure of the others. It doesn't care that others are hurting or have less, or don't have the same thing that they do or whatever. They see their own survival as the most important thing, and they will do hurtful, harmful, abusive things to others in order to keep what they feel, their needs and desires met. That is really the true red flag and marker of the negative. And so that's pretty much where I'll leave it at for energy, sort of the basics of energy exchanges. Now this is obviously at a multitude of different angles. You have energy exchanges happening within yourself, the three bodies that make you up, your mind, body, and spirit. They all have their own little boss, and they all have energy communication and exchanges happening in there. You have them within your direct family, all the people that your immediate life that you interact with every day, even strangers and people you bump into in the daily. They also have to do with ideas and rituals and traditions maybe that you're involved in, community service kind of things. They can also just be ideas that you have, assumptions and philosophies, groupthink kind of things that you get yourself involved in, are all different energy exchanges. But we're going to get into all the layers and the different varieties at another time. This is just a template for generic understanding. And finally here, for the last I just want to bring up this quick basic template of how systems kind of function. And hold on. Zoom, I feel, is not presentation friendly. There we go. That's okay. So this final infographic here is really about the systems and how they manifest and how they, what kind of symptoms or atmosphere that they allow so that we can recognize them out there in the external world and understand if we want to consent to them and be a part of them, if we want to add our energy to them or not. I'll get into the real depth of how the expectations of individuals are work in the positive and negative when I dive into each one individually, but this is just overall differences here, just so we can get a quick idea. As you can see, we have free-flowing communication. I use the same exact hierarchy here with that kind of tying in to understand perspective of differences. You can see right away we have free-flowing communication with this sort of porous boundary. It shows that kind of circle that's not really completed for a reason, because it allows interaction with all other things that are outside of it. It remembers there's other great wholes outside the sacred boundary that's been formed for whatever reason. Creative consciousness has temporarily formed this boundary around it. There's still other things out there that we are interacting with. There's still the great whole. So that's I left that like that to show a porous boundary. Versus the firm boundary of the cube, set a strict system and parameters around it, right? There's architecture there. And I use that word architecture a lot when I'm talking about the 3D matrix overlay, because it really is important to understand that there is these same kind of solid forms that we build out in the world. There are similarly solidly formed structures within the thought realms, within the energetics. And if we could realize that, and I think we'd notice truth more. You can also see that the arrows, the difference in the arrows that I use here, the top down, really straightforward of the negative that shows this strict allowance of communication that happens, and that's top down. That's need to know kind of regular setup. Like, you know your function, and if something's wrong with the function, that tasks in the process that you're involved with, then you have a meet point up above that you report to, and you tell them this is wrong, that's wrong, this is happening. Those people above you are the managers, right? And they have their informational points, and if it's something that they don't fix and they don't control within their level, they have an upwards chain that they carry up to the top, and then they make their decisions. Or there can be even higher ups, right? But it's always this chain of sort of information of importance that goes along with it, and that only the one at the top gets the chance to see the whole picture and see the full value and be a part of it and impact it, and underneath it is lesser and lesser, and those boundaries are firm. You know what I mean? The interactions are you're not allowed to, say as a corporate worker in a cubicle, you're not allowed to go up to the CEO and start telling him how to do his job. You know what I mean? That's not the way it works in a negative alignment of systems. When we look conversely over at positive side, I chose wavy lines of arrows and I made them in every direction, because if we remember, these people are all on a sovereign standing horizontal level of evenness. Interactions are allowed to happen between all of them at any angle or any change. It free flows between it, because every single one of them is an important, integral piece of the whole that has value and does see the whole picture, and can and is able and is expected to see the whole picture and to know its whole working and whole value. And that creates a much different type of flow, a whole different atmosphere of expectations and interactions, right? And like I said, we'll get into all these things much deeper at a later time. But just know that we have a feeling of allowing change, a free flow, or we have something that rejects change and that is stagnant and needs to be conformed to. And that's basically your sensing tools that you can start to work with to understand whether things are negatively or positively aligned. And again, let's try to pull out of the scope of adding this good and bad ethic morality to it. That is a later function. Once you understand unconditional love, and once you can see the bigger picture, then you can come at morals and ethics from the different standpoint point and understand the all-encompassing kind of unconditional love that comes through understanding and working with the truth that we are all one. And that takes time and wisdom and a lot of movement, a lot of catalysts and change for you to create your own definition of what that means to you. And again, it's ever changing, and you'll come back to it and learn deeper and deeper each time. And so yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll close my screens for now. I hope I haven't taken up too much time, and I hope that I have kind of just given a quick intro to all the things that I'm going to break down at later times. Hopefully didn't overwhelm anybody. Take your time. Feel free to check out the links and references in the description and in the comments if you want some further learning before I air out these episodes. Episode 1 I pre-recorded already, and it is kind of a roundabout deep dive talk into energy, energetics, and systems. So I hope you'll enjoy that, and yeah, we'll see where it takes us from there. In the meantime, you know, you can always find me directly on my website, amariespeaks.com, or find me on Telegram under AMarieSpeaks. So I'll see you next time.